President Biden has unveiled his 2024 fiscal year budget proposal.
He announced a plan at a union hall in Philadelphia today. The president addressed union workers, outlining his goal to reduce the deficit by $3 trillion over the next decade. The proposed budget includes lowering costs for families, bolstering Social Security and Medicare, and creating education opportunities. The president said he is prepared to meet with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to begin negotiations.
I said, I'm going to introduce my budget on the 9th of March. You introduce yours, and we'll sit down and we'll go line by line, and we'll go through it. We'll see what we can agree on and what we disagree on, and then fight it out in the Congress. So I want to make it clear, I'm ready to meet with the Speaker anytime, tomorrow, if he has his budget. Lay it down, tell me what you want to do, I'll show you what I want to do, see what we can agree on, what we don't agree on, let's see what we vote on.
Joining us now for more on this is CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, what are some of the most notable actions the president is pushing for in his budget proposal?
Well, let's go through some of the big new spending items first, Nikki, and then we'll talk about some of the new taxes. So the president is proposing spending hundreds of billions of dollars, new dollars, on things like pre-K, free community college, paid family leave, affordable child care. But the White House is insisting that all of this new spending will be more than offset by all the new taxes that they're proposing, including raising the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28% and letting some of the Trump-era tax cuts for wealthy individuals, those making more than $400,000 a year, expire, plus a new hike in the Medicare tax rate for people making over $400,000 a year. And then you mentioned that big 25% billionaires tax. There are more, but those are some of the highlights. All in all, the White House says that this would cut the deficit by about $3 trillion over the next 10 years. And you sort of saw the president at the start of that speech lay down a gauntlet and say, OK, Speaker McCarthy, I'm showing you mine, you show me yours. What do you want to cut? How do you want to lower the deficit? Because Republicans have said that that's something that's very important to them, but they haven't said yet how they plan to do it.
So now the fun starts. I guess the president said he's ready to meet with House Speaker McCarthy. I believe the quote was anytime, even as soon as tomorrow. So, Nancy, let me just ask you, is this posturing, the typical Biden affability of let's talk, or is this actually a signal that perhaps there might be less divisiveness while negotiating than initially believed?
Certainly plenty of posturing, but the White House is well aware that Republicans, led by Speaker McCarthy, have said that they are not going to vote to raise the debt ceiling, which is something that they need to do in order to enable the country to keep borrowing to pay its bills sometime this summer. They say they're not going to vote to do that unless there are major spending cuts. And so this is the president saying, OK, here's what I would cut. He actually isn't proposing any cuts to domestic or military spending, really. He's proposing raising more money via taxes. The White House believes that what he's proposing is broadly popular. So they're saying, OK, well, if you want to cut domestic programs, show us what you want to cut. Do you want to cut programs for the poor? Do you want to cut Medicare or Social Security? How do you want to do it? And Speaker McCarthy has said, just like the president, that he wants to sit down and continue to talk. But this is the president basically saying, well, show me your numbers first, and then we'll talk.
Nancy, to what extent is today's speech and the president's decision to make it in Philadelphia significant to his potential 2024 run?
Very significant. I mean, this is a battleground state, Pennsylvania, so it's one that the president seems to return to time and time again for big announcements like this one. The White House quick to point out that Pennsylvania is something of a second home for him. He grew up in Scranton, so he has personal ties to the state, but he will be beating a path to Pennsylvania many, many times over the next year and a half because it is such an important battleground. And this budget, in many years, budgets kind of come and go because they aren't binding. Any president can propose anything, but it's Congress at the end of the day that makes the laws that govern federal spending. But it is getting more attention this time around, both because of that Republican threat that they may not vote to raise the debt ceiling, and because we are getting close to a potential announcement of a re-election bid by this president. And so this, in a way, sort of serves as a blueprint of his policy priorities. Most of these things can't pass now that Republicans control the House. In fact, they couldn't pass even the last couple of years when Democrats controlled the House. But nevertheless, the president is saying, this is what I want to do now, and this is what I'd like to do in a second term as well.
CBS News Chief White House Correspondent Nancy Cordes, thanks so much for spending some time with us.
You're welcome.